Alright, so I hear about this a lot in the fighting game community and like talking fighting games and fighting game discussions in general. Everybody's like, oh, fighting game combos are so much easier now. They used to be so much harder, but now fighting games are just getting watered down and the combos are just way easier, anyone can do them, etc, etc. But that's just not true, alright? And I am here to explain why that is. Now I remember this whole discussion, this whole debate really started with Street Fighter V because I remember everybody saying after a good amount of time after Street Fighter V's release, everybody's like, oh, I miss Street Fighter 4. And then people have this discussion and this debate of like, Street Fighter 5's easier than Street Fighter 4. Street Fighter 4 had more mechanics, had more depth, and then gets into the argument of Street Fighter 4 was a much harder game, had way harder combos, and that was what made it better and more interesting and more fun to watch, was because the combos were harder to do. I think that kind of goes into like a deeper discussion of player expression, and you know, combos being quote unquote harder, I don't think was the actual problem. I think there just wasn't as many people trying to play the game with as much ways to get good as there are now. I feel like back then, you know, technology wasn't how it is now, right? Like nowadays you go online, you go on YouTube, you can easily find a guide for combos for the character you want to main, and you can find the most optimal combo routes in that video and just practice them, and then there you go. There's so many guides out there for so many different characters and so many different fighting games that, you know, it gets to a point where nothing really becomes surprising anymore in tournament because we've seen it all before. It's all out there. It's all online somewhere. Back in that Street Fighter 4 era, I think that was still in the time where people weren't just putting all the tech online for everyone to see, you know, or at the very least, there wasn't as many people invested in fighting games and interested in being good at fighting games like that, to where everybody's just watching all these videos and getting to that god level that they want to be at and doing all these crazy combos, right? And I think now we're kind of at that point where someone will teach you how to play the character, teach you the optimal combo routes, and that's all you'll see in every tournament is the same combo that everybody's doing. I think that's the bigger picture and the bigger problem people were having, but they were kind of directing a lot of that energy towards, no, the combos are easier to do now and they were much harder in Street Fighter 4 than they are in Street Fighter 5. But yeah, that's just not true. Yes, there were probably perhaps more one-frame links in Street Fighter 4 than there are in Street Fighter 5, but I feel like the thing that really changed my mind and what made me realize, no, combos are not easier to do now in fighting games. You guys are just doing the easier ones, is when I watched this video by Brian F, where he made the Oro combo video. If you guys haven't seen that video, I definitely recommend watching it because it's kind of insane. And the fact that one combo from one character can, you know, stretch to like a 10-minute video, or I forgot how long the video actually was, but it was pretty long. And it was really entertaining the entire time. But yeah, like when I watched that video, I realized, yeah, no, how come people aren't doing this combo in tournament? Oh, because it's way too hard, way too impractical. But that doesn't mean that people can't do it. That doesn't mean that combos overall have gotten easier. It's just people aren't doing the hard combos in fighting games anymore because, you know, they don't necessarily have to, but I don't think that means, oh, all combos in fighting games are easier now. You know, when you get into Street Fighter 5, you get into all these micro walks, right? And people were not doing that. We're not incorporating those into their combos. But I think whenever you would see a combo that had a micro walk in there, it's like, whoa, okay, that's kind of crazy. And to me, that was like the one frame link, that one sauce factor that, you know, seeing someone pull off in a game was crazy because you know that no one could really do that, or that a lot of people weren't really doing that unless you really, really, really labbed your character and knew exactly what point in the combo you could micro walk and what exactly that would do for the combo to extend it. But that's the thing, like people weren't even aware of micro walks in combos in Street Fighter at that time. So I feel like, you know, everybody was just like, oh, we missed the one frame links and all that stuff. But no, Street Fighter 5 had crazy combos too. It's just nobody was really doing them because they were way much effort and perhaps not really worth the effort. But that doesn't mean those hard ass combos didn't exist. Again, I highly recommend watching that Brian F video where he dives into this crazy Oro combo that you can do. I'll probably link it in the description below or have it on screen somewhere for you guys to check out. But yeah, that video really opened my eyes and made me realize that, yeah, combos are still hard as fuck to do. People just aren't doing them. They've just given up on that whole challenge of trying to do this insane combo in tournament because it's probably not really worth it. But those insane combos still exist. And also, a part that really annoys me about this whole argument that fighting game combos are easier now and they're not as hard to do as they used to be is when people say that, I feel like they're not really taking the average person into account, because I feel like whenever I teach my friends or teach someone that has never played a fighting game before in their life, I try to teach them a fighting game. Bro, seeing them struggle to do a Hadouken, to do a Shoryuken is like just actually like I start to realize, okay, maybe fighting games need to be more watered down because it's kind of sad. And I really want fighting games to be more popular, to be, you know, more accessible for people to play. Like I want fighting games to be bigger. So I understand, you know, lowering the difficulty because not everyone wants to get into a fighting game because they're just too hard. But I also understand the appeal of seeing something that's not easy to do and seeing someone do it in tournament because you know how crazy that is like eye candy. It's very satisfying to watch. But for the average person, like most people struggle to do a Hadouken, to do Shoryuken, like, you know, and people forget that. And they're like, oh yeah, fighting game combos are so easy now. And it's like, to the average person, I don't know, man. I still think it's crazy hard for someone that's never played a fighting game to like have a reason to pick a character. And then before they hop into a match, they have to like learn this character, learn their combos. And that's the thing, learning a combo for a character, it's not just like, oh, I press this one button and bam, there's the combo. You know, it's not that easy. It's not like Marvel Rivals where you hop in with a character in the practice range for like 5 minutes, you learn their abilities and you're good to go. All you gotta do is aim and shoot, aim and do the ability, press one button to do the ability, it's that simple. No, like when you get into a fighting game and you get into a character, you're spending hours learning every single move that character has, learning what that move really does. You know, if it's Street Fighter, you're learning the different buttons and the different space that it controls with each button. You're learning the frame data, you're learning the consequence of pressing that button at the wrong time and realizing that that could cause death. You're learning when to press that button when another character's button challenges yours. And then after that, you're learning combos, you're learning special moves. That takes hours, and not just hours to learn it, but hours of practice to not mess it up in an actual game. It's like basically learning an instrument, you know, like you really have to take time to learn and practice this stuff. And also not just learning it, not just practicing it, but staying conditioned. Like, yes, you keep that muscle memory, but you still have to every now and then do the combo or do the special move to remember that that's what that does. I feel like whenever I stop playing Tekken for like weeks at a time, I feel like I just revert back to being completely ass. Versus when I take a break from like Fortnite or take a break from Marvel Rivals, as soon as I hop back in, it's like I never left, you know, because all you really need is good aim. All you really need is to aim and shoot, you know, and that doesn't really go away with that much time. But memorizing combos, memorizing everything a character does, and then, you know, you want to play multiple characters or you have to learn things that other characters do. There's just so much that goes into learning a fighting game that I feel like it's very easy to forget combos and forget what strings into what for the average person. Like, I'm talking about average people, but I'm also talking about myself. As a fighting game fan, it is hard for me sometimes to remember everything that every character does. You know what I mean? And I wouldn't consider myself an average person. I also wouldn't consider myself a pro player, but I love fighting games. I play a lot of fighting games. And even for me, it's hard. Like, I every now and then have to practice Vanessa combos and King of Fighters because I know if I don't, I just forget everything. And I don't want to forget all that progress that I made to learn this extremely hard, long combo. You know what I mean? And at the same time, like, imagine practicing different combos for different characters in different fighting games. Like, it just becomes so much. So for the average person, yeah, it's kind of hard. They kind of need to be watered down for them just to get in. And I understand why. So when people complain about them being too easy now, I feel like they never consider just the average person, because the average person would probably say they're way too hard still and I'm not playing them. And developers are thinking, damn, we want those people's money, you know? So you have to think about it in the big picture, you know? And I feel like a lot of people are just like, oh, we want fighting games to be harder again. And it's like, bro, fighting games are not doing well enough to make them harder than they are now, you know? But yeah, also feel like harder doesn't always equal better, you know? I think doing long combos it's really cool to watch, right? And if you practice those combos, it is really satisfying and really cool to do as well. Like, oh damn, I'm kind of nice with it. I kind of got those combos, you know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, I feel like a lot of fighting games come down to a different mechanic that's not just the combo, right? Like, it's not just like, oh, I learned this really long combo, now I win the game. I think if a fighting game is designed around that, then I don't know if I would say that's a great design, right? But I do feel like it is necessary to have different designs for different fighting games. Like, I feel like Marvel is a very combo heavy game. So if you do practice combos and you love doing combos, you'll probably succeed far in that game. Versus a game like Skullgirls, where combos are also, you know, pretty good in that game. But like, I think that game is more about the mix, right? You mix up the opponent, you'll go far in that game. Then you have a game like Street Fighter, where it's all about spacing, controlling the space, controlling the neutral. And if you want to get into neutral, I mean, there's also Sam Show, where that game is just all neutral, right? There's not really any combos in that game. So if you're all about neutral and you don't like combos, Sam Show's the game for you, you know? Like, there's just so many different types of fighting games, and that's what I love about fighting games. But I do feel like, yeah, combos are, like, I like that they are important for certain fighting games, but I also don't think they need to be important for every fighting game. As in, like, every fighting game has to have a huge focus on combos and, like, learning the combos, and if you drop your combo, then you lose the game. Like, I feel like, you know, there has to be a reward for also being good at reading your opponent, or being good at reactions, or being good at other things. Like, combos aren't just the only thing that matters when it comes to fighting games. So them being harder, them being longer and harder to pull off doesn't always equal them being better, or fighting games in general being better, right? People already don't really play fighting games enough. So I feel like making combos harder to do and making fighting games in general harder to get into is necessarily the right move. Fighting games are hard because of more than just combos, right? There's a lot of decision making that comes into them, and you really have to be on your toes with reading your opponent and what they're gonna do, not just in one moment. Or, you know, when it comes to games like Fortnite or team shooters like Marvel Rivals, you know, you can have a strategy going into things, and you can have times where it gets to end game and you're like, oh, we've got to make a smart decision within our strategy in that heat of the moment, and that can be like, oh shit, you know? But I feel like fighting games, you're making that heat of the moment strategy change every single second of the round. Like, it is very hard to stay on your toes in a fighting game, and to me, that's what makes them hard. You know, reading your opponent, shifting the momentum, and you know, like there's just so many things. There's so many things that make a fighting game hard. It's not just the combos, right? So that's kind of one of the reasons why I love DOA, is that combos in DOA, if you know what your opponent's going to do, you can hold. There's a hold mechanic in DOA where basically it's kind of like a combo breaker, but it's more intuitive. You actually have to press the according button and according direction, depending on if they are doing a punch or a kick. If you guess right and press the according button combination within their combo, you can counter their combo and shift the momentum to where now you have the offensive. But you have to time it right, and again, you have to press different combination of buttons depending on if it's a punch or a kick, and it also depends on if it's a low, mid, or high. So each factor requires a different button combination, which sounds kind of crazy, but that's what makes it very hard. But if you can do that, you basically negate combos in general, right? And so at that point, what's the point of making all these combos harder or longer or whatever when the combos can just be negated, right? And that's kind of why I love DOA, but that's also why I think DOA is one of the hardest fighting games of all time. When you get to like the highest level, combos don't even matter anymore if you can actually predict what your opponent's gonna do. And that, to me, that's just insane. That's insane. That's why I struggle a lot in that game sometimes. I also, at the same time, consider myself pretty good at the game. So it's crazy, man. It's crazy. I feel like that game is just insane, and people are very people underrate that game so much. But yeah, Dead or Alive is crazy, man. I need to make a video that's just all about why I love DOA and why you should too, but that'll be a different video for a different day. But yeah, also I think it's kind of interesting because when people say combos are easier now, my thing is like, what exactly is easy about a combo to you, right? Because I made a video talking about like what's the hardest fighting game, and I kind of need to make a different video about that, because basically my whole point was that you can't really say what's the hardest fighting game, because every person that plays a fighting game has different things they're going to find easy and that different things they're going to find hard. To me, I feel like there's certain parts about fighting games that are harder than others. Like, for example, Dragon Ball FighterZ is a very easy fighting game in some areas. At the same time, like, it's easy to do the combos in Dragon Ball FighterZ, but it's hard to remember the combo when it becomes like 3 or 4 pages long. And then it's like, wait, like, these are easy to do. The execution aspect of it is easy, but the remembering aspect of it is hard because it's so long. It's so fucking long. Like, you know, and at that point it's like, okay, well, what makes the combo hard? Is it the 1-frame link? Is it how long the damn thing is? Is it, you know, the buttons and what you have to press within the combo feeling awkward? Like, you know, so that's another thing I think that needs to be considered or factored in, is like, what exactly is so quote unquote easy about combos nowadays that wasn't easy before, you know? But yeah, last but not least, I kind of want to end this video off talking about, you know, me personally, I think that there is still hard combos in modern fighting games in today's, you know, day and age. Obviously there's characters that are very hard to play, right? Like in Tekken, you have the Kazuyas, you know, you have the Devil Jins, you have these very execution heavy characters that people just buy hitboxes specifically just to play them because it's easier to do on hitbox. But also, like, you know, if you guys didn't know, I'm a Juri main. I love Juri. She's probably still my favorite fighting game character of all time, favorite video game character of all time. She is the reason I got into fighting games. And that character is not easy to play, bro. She has not been easy since Street Fighter 4, and she is not easy in Street Fighter 6. Now, I will say the reason she's not easy to play in those 2 games is different, right? In 4, I think her execution was just a bit harder. Like you had to hold the button. She was a negative edge character, but that's kind of why I liked her. But I also just really loved her design and her personality, everything. But in Street Fighter 6, I feel like she's a very hard character to play. And I think people don't really think about it because they see juries in tournament that are playing her, and, you know, they're playing her, but I don't think they're actually playing her, right? I feel like that character and her level 2 alone makes her so hard. And I truly do not think people are using her level 2 to the max of their capabilities that she can be used to really show off the character at the highest level of play. I think Juri is extremely difficult to where most Juri mains don't learn the full ins and outs of her level 2 because it's just too much. It's too complex. So they kind of just learn it a little bit to close out, you know, kills or close out damage, close out rounds, and that's it. But that character in her level 2, there is a lot going on. There is a lot of complex things to learn about Juri. And I think a lot of that plays into the combos she's able to do at certain points. Like, there's certain things that string into certain things, and those things change with just the slightest like change in the opponent and the way they're standing. Like the you know, there's so many different things that factor into her combo routes within her level 2. And to me, it's just like, bro, also you can factor in, like, you know, these micro walks and just these different things that, yeah, like there's just so many things. And you know, if you guys are unaware or if you're kind of interested in that, there's a guide to Juri's level 2. I mean, I'm sure there's a bunch of guides to Juri's Feng Shui engine on YouTube, but you know, if you just look some up, some of the more detailed ones really go into what she's able to do within her level 2. And it just, you know, I personally, like I said, I'm a Juri main. I love Juri. She's my favorite character in video games. So I've really been trying to get into that and, you know, really make use of all her capabilities within her level 2. And so I've just been kind of studying that, and it just made me realize, like, you know, these people talking about, oh, fighting games are easy now, the combos are so easy, like they used to be so hard. I'm like, what are y'all talking about? Like, y'all are not playing this fucking character, bro. You don't know what you're talking about, because this character, these different combo routes and all these different things, like all these complex things I have to learn. I'm like, bro, you guys are just not, we are not talking about the same type of fighting games, bro. Like, oh, it kind of makes me upset when I hear that. And I'm like, bro, I'm out here studying like a fucking college degree, like essay level of a character, bro. So yeah, I think there are definitely options for those people that are talking, oh, these fighting games are so easy now. They want something. If you want something harder, there's something out there that's harder for you. You just haven't found it yet. Or you're too lazy to learn that character because they're too hard and you just don't want to admit it. But yeah, I think I'm going to end the video off here with that note. If you guys have made it this far, please leave a like on the video. That would help me out a ton. I love fighting games so much and I love talking about them, as you can tell. But we also love other things gaming related over here. Sonic, Devil May Cry, Kingdom Hearts, you know, JRPGs, everything in between. So if you liked what I had to say, please consider subscribing. But yeah, that is going to be it for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And hopefully I will catch y'all in the next one.